Looking to catch up on the latest Star Wars books? Try listening to them on audio. Featuring sound effects and music directly from the movies, Star Wars audiobooks are the definitive listening experience. From brand new audiobooks such as Thrawn, Treason, and the audiobook exclusive Dooku, Jedi Lost, to our blockbuster movie tie-in editions, you'll have plenty to keep you entertained. Start listening wherever audiobooks are sold.
This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is Vanessa Marshall, Harrison Dula from Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi, show number 290. We are your spoiler-free place for Star Wars discussion, analysis, and rhetoric. I'm your host, Dan Z, drinking One Nation coffee out of my white and gray Lucasfilm mug. If you are following Coffee with Kenobi on Instagram, you may have noticed that each day of the week I have been showcasing a different Star Wars coffee mug in our Instagram stories. Be sure to follow Coffee with Kenobi on Instagram and check out my collection of Star Wars mugs there. This episode of Coffee with Kenobi is brought to you by MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. For all of your travel needs to the Disney theme parks, the cruise lines, or anywhere you want to go on vacation, and especially if you're planning that trip to Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland or Walt Disney World, be sure to go to our affiliate link, which can be found in the show notes on the front of our webpage or on our social media feeds, and sign up for a free, no obligation quote. Coffee with Kenobi is also brought to you by One Nation Coffee, the official brew of Coffee with Kenobi. For the best coffee in the galaxy, go to www.onenationcoffee.com today and sign up for a subscription service so you never miss out on the best coffee in the galaxy. On today's show, author Cavan Scott discusses the audio drama Dooku, Jedi Lost. It is a great conversation and he is a fascinating person to listen to. You are absolutely going to love it. Also joining us on the show today, Tom Gross is back with the latest Star Wars news. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite coffee mug, and let's have some coffee with Kenobi.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first?
Joining me today for a cup of coffee, he is a UK best-selling author and comic book writer, but on today's show, we'll be looking at his brilliant audio drama, Dooku, Jedi Lost. Of course, I am talking about the one and only Cavan Scott.
Hello there. I'm a little bit worried that I'm drinking tea on Coffee with Kenobi.
You know, you were
okay?
not the first person from the UK to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I have coffee, but it's the afternoon now. If I drink coffee now,
yes,
I wouldn't sleep tonight. So.
We can't have that. No,
yeah.
Tea is absolutely perfect. I think Sir Alec Guinness would feel the same way.
Obviously.
Well, let's go ahead. It's great to finally have you on Coffee with Kenobi. Let's go ahead and talk about the journey that led you to Dooku, Jedi Lost. How did the project come about?
Well, it was a long time coming in a way. I started off writing radio drama here in the UK. Nearly 20 years ago now. That was how I sort of started in fiction. And I've been constantly mentioning this to various people at Lucasfilm. Because obviously I was a big fan I'm a big fan of radio drama. I was a big fan of the Star Wars radio plays back in the day. And also some of the audio dramas that came out during the Legends period as well. And so, yeah, it was something that I kept mentioning. And then eventually, not because I've been asking at all, but they came to, you know, that audio drama is starting to grow in popularity in the States as well, largely through, you know, such places as Audible. And so my nagging must have paid off, and they remembered that I'd been banging on about this for a while. So September last year, I was working on the Project Luminous project I'm involved in. And part of that, I got a message saying, can we talk to you about doing a Star Wars original? And that's where it came from, really.
I love that. So obviously the audio drama aspect was good, but so how did you settle on Dooku, the character of Dooku? Because clearly you've had a vision for a while about creating something wonderful like this. And how did Dooku come into the picture?
Well, Dooku was brought by Lucasfilm. It was part of over this last year, they've had a sequence of releases where it would be stories from the prequel era, stories from the original trilogy, and now stories from the sequels leading up to Episode 9. And so this was originally planned for that sort of period when they were dealing with the prequels. So there was things like Master and Apprentice. There was things like Queen's Shadow. So yeah, they came to me with the idea of it being Dooku. They gave me a list of areas we could take it. It wasn't directives by any means, but ideas they'd had. And the one that really rang true was this idea of looking at his life before he left the Order, of sort of seeing Dooku as an apprentice, Dooku as a trainer, and most importantly, Dooku as a Jedi, which is something we've never really seen before. We've seen him as a Sith plenty of times, but we never really explored his Jedi life. So yeah, that it came from them, and then I went away and took those notes and started to pull together the story that eventually became Jedi Lost.
And it is definitely a masterpiece. Penguin Random House Audio was kind enough to send me an advanced copy, and boy, I devoured that thing. And it's a lengthy one. It's a wonderful experience, because it is an experience. And one of the first things I read from you about this project on StarWars.com, I believe, was that it was important for you to give Dooku a fall to the dark side that did not revolve around Palpatine. Now, certainly,
right.
certainly you want to give it your own spin and keep it removed from Anakin Skywalker's fall. But what else went into your creative process?
Well, again, it was thinking of, I wanted to focus on who the man used to be, because when you look at when the Jedi first find out that Dooku's behind a lot of the things in the Clone Wars, there's a real shock there, and again, it was coming back to that thought that he was in his 60s by the time he left the Jedi Order. And if you think about it, Jedi become Jedi at a very early age, so that's decades of a life where the things that would lead to his fall, would start to be playing a part. But he must have been a well-respected Jedi, so I wanted to look at that. And yeah, I didn't want his leaving the Jedi and the things that would lead to his eventual fall to be all part of obviously they're part of a bigger plan. Palpatine has plans that go beyond anything, but there had to be something in Dooku's life that would lead to this, because it's that old saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and you can't believe that Dooku was black-hearted from day one. So yeah, it was looking at that and sort of seeing what could send him on the way to his eventual fall. What could lead a man who was so obviously Jedi to turn to the other side?
Which is kind of a nice Shakespearean turn, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tragedy completely. I mean, there are very few people in this play that end up in a good place.
Yes.
Including Dooku and obviously Ventress as well. I knew there wasn't going to be a happy ending. There was a lot of conversations about how dark the ending should be, but when you look at where it is in the timeline, right at the beginning of the Clone Wars, before Dooku's really come out of the shadows, when Ventress is still a brand new apprentice, by that very nature, it has to have a dark ending to it. And so I was very interested in how they got started on that road for both of them, not just Dooku, the Ventress as well.
Oh, for sure. So let's go ahead and turn our attention to some key relationships in Jedi Lost, especially Dooku's sister Jenza. Talk about her creation and what she brings to our understanding of Dooku as a complex character. Yeah,
I mean, I wanted right from the beginning to introduce his family, because there is Dooku's a bit of a gift when you're coming to write Star Wars, because he's such a major character, but we know so little about him, and we know so little about Sereno. Obviously, it'd been visited before in Legends, but even then, there wasn't a lot about it. And so, in the past, we've seen his family back in the expanded universe, but I don't think Dooku's brother even had a name. It was just Dooku's brother. So I wanted to really delve into that family and sort of see again, what part they played in his eventual fall as well. And also, he's a man who doesn't seem to have the ability to form relationships very easily. So I wanted to see how he would form a relationship that that is obviously so bound up in his past. Because when you look at him and Ventress, which is up to now the only sort of real family we've seen for Dooku in a strange kind of way. One of my favourite episodes of the Clone Wars is the episode when he finally betrays her at the behest of the Emperor or Darth Sidious, and there's a real conflict in him at that point. You can tell he doesn't want to betray his apprentice, but he will do so because he will obey his master. So again, I wanted to explore relationships and what stronger relationship have you got than a familial one. Again, I didn't want it to be too near Anakin, so I didn't want him to have a love interest. I thought that was too, we'd seen that road before, but we haven't really seen Jedi with siblings because of the rules of breaking off all your attachments. It's something that Dooku obviously went back on his life. He went back to his home planet. So I wanted to see a little bit about what that past was and what pulled him back to Sereno when he was so entrenched in the Jedi way of life.
And Jenza is someone that definitely brings out different sides of him, but it shows more compassion in Dooku than I certainly ever expected to see.
Yeah, because he can't just be, again, he can't be a moustache twirling villain. He has to have depth there, and so it was a way of really exploring those. And with all the relationships we put Dooku through in Jedi Lost, it was to explore different parts of who he is. And I think a lot of it came back in the early days when we were discussing the story. We were struggling a little bit to really get hold of his character and work out exactly who he was going to be. And the danger was that he would become, Anakin, well, not 2.0, sort of a proto-Anakin. And so early on with conversations with Elizabeth at Del Rey, we discussed the fact that his arrogance is the thing about him. Even right to the end, when you see his execution, up to that point, he still believes this is all part of a plan and that he's going to come out on top. And you can see the absolute despair in his face when he realizes he's been duped all the way along. And so, we kept coming back to that sense of self-assurance that he is the best that he could be. And so we were looking at different ways to sort of pierce that bubble and poke him with that. So you've got Cypher Deus, who's like a brother to him, who won't put up with his nonsense. And then you've got his sister, who naturally goes through his defenses because there is a connection there that he didn't know he could even experience. When they first experience him, he doesn't know she's his sister, but he can still sense something, whether it's through the Force or just that aspect of family. He knows there's something special about this person. And a connection he can't explain. So it was just ways of poking his arrogance and the thing that makes him Dooku and seeing how he'd react.
Sure, in react he does, but this story is interesting for many reasons, but one of them is, we've talked about the relationship with Ventress, but what inspired the decision to tell the story from Asajj Ventress's point of view?
Again, it was something that came out of the initial discussions. Ventress was it seemed just too good an opportunity to have Ventress because she's such a great character. She's so much part of the Clone Wars and Dooku's part in the Clone Wars that it seemed, she seemed a very good window to the story. It was a good way of telling the story of Dooku because we didn't want to get too close to him in the way that we didn't want him telling his own story, which is actually what we ended up with, but I tried to do it in a way that, wouldn't be expected. And so to have a first-person narration through this, when you're in Ventress's head, you're seeing what she sees. She's quite an unreliable narrator throughout, but you're getting to see Dooku through her lens. And she's such a unique character within Star Wars as well and has such a great voice that, it was a good way of breaking down that story. And also we had to tell a story that would last 5 decades. And so to have a character who was dipping in and out of Dooku's life was an obvious choice. Now, I looked at various different people. There was, while Ventress was always going to be the main choice, I did look at alternatives. Is it a Jedi who is exploring rumors about Dooku? Is it a Padawan who's decided they're going to go after and find out who really is behind these problems that are besetting the galaxy? But while those seemed good ideas, they didn't really seem to have the way they just didn't have Ventress's voice, and it was always being missed. So so that's why Ventress became such a central part of it.
And it's fun too because it's earlier on in her career because we of course see what happens once she kind of breaks free of Dooku's grasp. But Ventress is just one of the compelling narrative elements of this incredible audio drama. So let's go ahead and bring on Tom for the latest Star Wars news, and then we'll take a break. And when we come back, Cavan will tell us about the Terataka and more compelling story elements in this incredible audio drama.
And now, let's see what's brewing in the Star Wars universe this week.
Oh, wait. This is interesting.
You found something.
I'm about to let everyone in on the secret.
All right, we have got a ton of Star Wars news this week. I mean, we've got it coming from Rancho Obi-Wan and Disney itself, and there's just so much, and I'm excited. And honestly, Tom, I don't know if I've ever told you this before, but sometimes I'll see a story and I'll think, you know what? I hope that Tom covers this, or I'm going to ask if Tom wants to cover this week, because he'll explain it in a way that will make more sense to me, and then we can just wax poetic. So take it away, boss.
Oh, very good. Well, last week we talked about Disney Plus and how visitors to D23 will get a sneak peek. This week, Disney CEO Bob Iger announced that they will be offering a bundle that includes Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, and the Hulu ad-supported streaming services, all three for $12.99 a month. By packaging the three together, consumers will save about $5 a month. Iger stated that the goal is to have general entertainment, family entertainment, and sports, which is what you get with Hulu, Disney Plus, and ESPN Plus. He says that this offer gives consumers tremendous volume, tremendous quality, and tremendous variety for a good price. And now, if you don't want it all, you can still get any of them individually, but especially Disney Plus for $6.99. Indeed.
I know that, and I know we're going to get into this in the next story, but I know ESPN has kind of been sort of the albatross for them. But I love that they're doing this. We already have Hulu at our house, but it's going to be no big deal to add. Yeah, it's going to be no big deal to add Disney Plus to that equation. And to me, ESPN is a bonus. All the sports I get are local baseball anyway, with the Cubs, or just the main stuff. But I think this is an absolute home run. I mean, again, poor Netflix. They've got to be shaking in their boots, because this just seems to be more and more like such an incredible thing. And in just, my goodness, just a couple of short weeks. Yeah. In a little over 2 weeks, I'm going to get to see this thing in action live. Yes. I cannot wait. Does this now, are you, I'm sure you're already all in, but are you going to do this bundle, or what are you going to do?
Well, that's a good question. We in our house, we just made a cable switch, and we went down to the very basic 12 channels that are all just basically local. And so when I got news of this, I was super excited. So we are already subscribers to Netflix, and there are a lot of shows on there that we do enjoy and that we watch.
Sure.
And then we have Amazon Prime. So of all of them, that's the one I'd be like, well, I'd probably get rid of Prime. But we use that service for the delivery aspect of it, and the music and the video or movie. The streaming service comes with that. So I think something like this is going to finish it for me. When I'm thinking about on a monthly basis, we're looking at $25, $26 a month for Netflix and this package, and that's 4 streaming services right there that covers just about all I watch anyway. So the one thing that I wish that Disney would do with and you talked about ESPN, and I know this is a Star Wars show, but since we're talking about this in the context, one thing I wish that ESPN could do was find a way to make an attempt to localize broadcasting. And what I mean by that is when they're showing an NBA game or a Major League Baseball game, I wish that they could somehow bring in a local aspect into the broadcast. Because I feel like, and I'll use baseball as the example, and I know the shortstop, what's his name? The biggest shortstop ever. He's a broadcaster on that. Oh my gosh, why am I thinking?
Oh, A-Rod.
A-Rod. He's on there, and you got a couple other people, and they speak so generally about the game. And I know they do their homework and they do their best, but they can't give me the broadcast that I want for,
No, it's national coverage, and that they're just not. That's never going to happen.
And I feel like even watching the Worldwide of Sports growing up, remember on ABC, I felt like even those national broadcasts felt so local. and maybe it's just my youth. But anyway, if there was one thing ESPN could do is back off on the NBA and give me a more even coverage of sports, and then find a way to localize. But aside from that, I think this is a great deal, and I will probably do it.
What if they give you the Ocho so you can watch dodgeball, then you'll be all in? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Only if it's beach dodgeball.
Oh, there you go.
Well, moving on to our next story. In financial news, Disney fell short of expected earnings in the third quarter. Even with the large box office numbers they had, the company's revenue fell short of the expected $21.4 billion, with per share earnings at $1.38, which is 28% lower than expected. Some explanation, and there is explanation, is that there was lower than expected earnings at Disneyland and Walt Disney World, with the expenses of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Lower than expected guest attendance also played a part, as well as, don't forget, the massive output of the Fox acquisition.
Yeah.
Wall Street will be watching the fourth quarter with a sharp eye as Galaxy's Edge will open later this month at Walt Disney World. Disney Plus will go live on November 12th, as well as a couple surefire films to add to the hefty box office for 2019 for Disney, with Frozen 2 and Rise of Skywalker both opening in December.
So I was really, really fascinated by this article because you hear, how many movies Disney has this year that have gone over $1 billion. You know, I mean, my goodness. But the Galaxy's Edge, I know, has been a little bit challenging for people. But the deal is, and then when I say people, I mean some of the Disneyland execs. But that's, again, we've talked about this a lot on this show and on Looking at Lucasfilm with Jim Hill. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they have done such a good job of cautioning people, and they had a block on cast members getting in and annual pass holders, so it's just guests that would come from out of town, basically. So that was why attendance was down. I mean, that's my professional opinion on that. I think it's going to be a lot more busy and more hectic once these things lift. At Walt Disney World today was the first day, at least the time of this recording, that you were able to go in and reserve at Oga's Cantina or Savvy's Workshop or into the Droid Builders. And from what I understand, for hours you're in a queue, and the queue is really cool because it shows the Falcon kind of swooping in and out of hyperspace.
Neat.
But what happens is you are pretty much looking at it being completely booked through December already.
Got it.
And that's scary. Again, this is just for the stuff that you have to pay to get into. You can still ride the Falcon. You can still have blue milk and green milk and do some shopping, and who knows what other things will open up and if there's standby lines for other things. So let's not panic just yet until we see how this all kind of goes out. But I don't know about you, but I was shocked that it was telling us that there was going to be a loss in the third quarter. I don't imagine that will stay that way after we get the fourth quarter earnings. And I don't really know how the stock market works that well, but I don't know. I'm not a stockholder, but I'm not panicked.
Oh, I don't think so at all. And I think the explanations all completely make sense. And I would bet that Disney corporate was well aware of those. You can't control expected dollar amounts. And there are things corporate wide that investors or the people who watch out for investors and make those predictions that they don't know. And so it'll all balance out, I have no doubt. But it also goes to show, this was the largest third quarter for Disney film wise. And the fact that you still have two colossal films to come out, it just shows that this is a diverse company. Just because you have a massive, influx of revenue from one aspect, as in the film industry, the parks and the toy sales, because another thing that the story that I left out from CBS was that toy sales for Star Wars were down. Not surprising. Stores are clearing their shelves. You go to our local Target or Walmart, they're clearing out the Star Wars stuff because we have a Triple Force Friday coming, within a month or so. And, and so you're going to see a jolt there. So I'm with you. I'm not concerned for Disney whatsoever. That was a high expense quarter, and now we're looking at the reaping the benefits of that, I believe.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too.
Yeah. Well, finally, let's get our pencils and scorecards ready. Oh, well, I'm sorry, I'm in baseball mode. Let's get our pencils and calendars ready because Rancho Obi-Wan has released the dates for their gala. Set aside June 12th and 13th. Yes, that was June 12th and 13th for a trip to Petaluma in 2020. The gala kicks off on the 12th with wine tasting with wines from Skywalker Vineyards. And then on the 13th, enjoy a day of summer fun, barbecue, games, auctions, touring all of Rancho Obi-Wan. And this year, we'll add a new online auction of original art and other items. More information will be coming out this fall, so stay tuned to the Rancho Obi-Wan website as well as their social media.
How fun, right? I mean,
yes.
I love the gala. You love the gala.
Oh, my goodness.
This will be the first time it's not going to be in the fall. So it's kind of nice for me that it's going to be in the summer. And that's going to be a very busy summer with the gala, San Diego Comic-Con, and of course Star Wars Celebration Anaheim. But if you've never been to the gala and you're in the area, or even if you're just like, you know what, I need to do this, it is well worth it. I mean, you can certainly speak to that as well as I can. It's tremendous fun. It's like how do you compare it to Celebration? I don't know if I've ever asked you that. Now that you've experienced both.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's like the spectacle of Celebration all in this museum setting. They have built and continue to expand their collection and their space, packed inch by inch with just Star Wars goodness. It's like going to the Willy Wonka of Star Wars. Does that work for you?
No, I think that makes sense.
So Celebration is massive. And it's huge, and the population is massive and exciting. The excitement level is the same at the gala. And what I love about the gala, besides just experiencing Rancho Obi-Wan itself, was, just getting to you really have time to take one-on-one with people that are visiting, people that love Star Wars, people that cover Star Wars, people that just, love a great spectacle. And I think it'll be interesting. There was something about being there in the fall. Remember how chilly it was when we went, but then that night of the gala, it was pretty temperate. It was warm, but you had that fall air, and so it'll be totally different in a summer setting. I'm sure it'll be plenty toasty warm, and but warm with Star Wars love as well as temperature.
Right.
But it'll just be great.
I love it. I think it's great. It's great fun. Steve is wonderful. I've gotten to know a lot of people because of Rancho Obi-Wan's Gala. It's a wonderful thing, and it goes to a really, really good place. So it's
indeed
good stuff.
And that's all I have for the news this week.
All right, very good. I mean, we're jam-packed, and there's even more we could probably cover, but we will save that for another time. Hey, Tom, thanks so much, as always, for the latest Star Wars news.
Absolutely.
Let's take another break, and when we come back, I will finish my conversation with Cavan Scott about Dooku, Jedi Lost. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
Greetings. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Looking to catch up on the latest Star Wars books? Try listening to them on audio, featuring sound effects, top-notch narrators, and music directly from the movies. Star Wars audiobooks are the definitive listening experience. From Luke Skywalker to Kylo Ren to Admiral Akbar, you'll recognize all of your favorite characters. Listen to movie tie-ins like The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens, and original titles such as Thrawn Treason, Alphabet Squadron, Master and Apprentice, and the audiobook exclusive Dooku Jedi Lost. With Star Wars audiobooks, you'll have plenty of Star Wars listening to keep you entertained. Available wherever audiobooks are sold. If you've been looking on social media, especially recently, you're seeing photos and images that people are posting from their experiences, the cast member previews at Walt Disney World and Galaxy's Edge and Batuu. I was especially excited to see Aaron Harris and Dave Motter's pictures and video from their experiences. They, of course, are the hosts of Resistance Reactions. They had a blast, and you are probably thinking, I want to go to Batuu. I've seen Aaron Dave's pictures. I've seen your images from Disneyland and the grand opening of California at Batuu as well. I want to go to Galaxy's Edge. I don't blame you, and what you should do, if I were you, would go to MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. They have signature service and expert advice to help clients maximize their vacation time and dollar. They have a no-cost, no-obligation quote when you use the service, and they also proactively adjust the booking if the rate goes down. They will help your family enjoy everything the Disney theme parks and the cruise lines have to offer, help plan every detail, and will share invaluable tips. Be sure to go to our affiliate link, which can be found in the show notes, on the front of our webpage, or on our social media feeds, and sign up for a free, no-obligation quote. One of the most important parts of the show is thanking my CWK Patreon contributors. Especially, I would love to thank Jason Hall, Dennis Keithley, Colby Mead, Yancey Evans, Dave Ritchie, Ross Halliban, Frank Mulder, Alexander Moylan, Melinda Wolf, Aaron Harris, Chris Kavarka, Angela Sauce, Rebecca Raven, Simbat Defterdarian, Christine Turk, Sean Reed, Kurt McKellen, Dan Ream, Brian Harding, Blake Weaver, Jim Capron, Caroline Maselli, Chris Metz, LJ Souter, Thea Selby, Jeff Ellis, Daz Davies, Christian Dale, Brian McKinney, Connie Shee, Jared Cantor, BJ Smith, Eric Struthers, Nick Tico, and Mark Suter. Your contributions to our Coffee with Kenobi Patreon page enable us to do so many things with the show, including equipment, travel, expenses, and lots of other things that go into planning and production of this Coffee with Kenobi website, podcasts, and our YouTube channel, Instagram, so many other things. It doesn't happen without each and every one of you. But you get something out of it as well. For $5 a month or more, you get access to CWK Pullover, which is our weekly podcast not heard anywhere else, hosted by myself, Tom Gross, and Corey Clubb. We look at Star Wars and other popular culture topics, and we go behind the scenes of the creation of this show and about our lives. It's a blast recording. It's a blast sharing with each and every one of you. And that is just the tip of the iceberg, because we have access for $10 or more a month to CWK Lens, which is a way, well, I guess the best way to look at it is if you think of Snapchat or Instagram stories, and that's what it is. It's through the app or the Patreon website, where I give daily video conversations or images of either my collection or Star Wars reactions and thoughts, and share some behind-the-scenes footage with each and every one of you. But perhaps most importantly, 10% of your donation to Coffee with Kenobi's Patreon account goes directly to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. It is such an important cause. It is on behalf of the memory of my aunt, and I really just can't think of a better way. You give to us, we help with the show, of course, but more importantly, 10% of your donations go to St. Jude, and I could not be more proud to be able to do that. Again, it is thanks to each and every one of you. If you have any questions or want to know more about Coffee with Kenobi and Patreon, go to www.patreon.com/coffeewithkenobi or sign up on the webpage with the red button on the top right of the website. Thank you so much. We are back with Cavan Scott. Now, before the break, we talked about Dooku Jedi Lost, this incredible audio drama that you have created. And among the many things that have happened in this story so far, we've met Asajj Ventress, we've met Count Dooku's sister Jenza, and a host of other characters. But now we move to the Terataka. This is that dragon creature on Sereno that plays a major role in Dooku's fall to the dark side.
Yeah.
That Dooku encounters at the beginning and the end of the book. Talk about the evolution of that character. And I'm particularly interested in your answer, being a Dungeons and Dragons player as well.
Well, this predates me. I've only just started playing Dungeons and Dragons, but I do have a big love of fantasy and dragons, and big monsters in general. And part of it is from a plain and simple. I like monsters in my audio dramas because they sound great, and also it was to get that side of romantic side of Dooku. He's a very elegant man. He likes his cloaks. You look at his lightsabers, and they have the hilts that are curved. Everything about him sort of screams elegance. And and then I look back into Legends and found in Legends there was the Dooku family airship, which there were conversations about me bringing back, but I knew that I wanted to bring back. And so that sort of added almost, dare I say, a little steampunk element to it as well. And so a dragon was there on my list, and it went through various different forms. At one point, there was an entire clan of them, but gradually we worked out that was getting a bit out of hand. And we looked at various different abilities it would have, and again, it was a way of linking the story to not just Dooku's past, but also the past of the planet as a whole. And when you look back and you realise that Sereno was part of the Sith Empire. And you look back, and I'm a big fan of the old sort of Sith handbooks and things like that. And you look back and you see the Sith War Beast. So, it all started to stack up that the dragon was going to be there. And there was lots of conversations about how far it was going to go. But yeah, there was, it's the swashbuckling, it's the fancy element of Dooku. I think he needed a big monster.
Oh, you always need a big monster.
You always do.
Well, it's a spectacular sequence. I'm not going to ruin anything for our listeners, of course. We're anti-spoiler anyway. But let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about Dooku, his relationship with the Padawan as a Jedi. And why is that important to set that stage? And what does it show us about Dooku as a person?
Well, I think it was always very interesting that, we most of the times we've seen our Jedi, and Master and Apprentice. But I've always loved those elements of the prequels where you see, especially Yoda working with the younglings. You see the pre-Padawan Jedi children, starting to be taught the ways of the light side, and again, I thought it'd be very interesting to see Dooku in that role. Someone again who has obviously got great charisma. Now, I think one of my favourite scenes in Dark Disciple is when you see him as a politician. You see him in the middle of a diplomatic event, and he's there with wine in his hand and charming people and that kind of thing. So again, I wanted to put him into as many situations as possible where you see him. A very private person having to be a public figure, and within the temple, how you couldn't get much more public than being a teacher, and also it would again challenge him that if he thought he was the chosen Jedi, to coin a phrase, that he then ends up teaching. It's that thing about people who can't teach, and here's a man who really believes he can do everything, and he's kept back within the temple walls teaching the next generation. And what would that feel like to a man of Dooku's mindset? And again, given the idea that some of those people that he taught would end up being Jedi who would fight him and his army later on in the Clone Wars. And that's an interesting thing to play with, and setting seeds for future stories that some of those Padawans and some of those younglings that he would have an influence on would end up hating him, if Jedi can hate at all. Sure. So again, a lot of these things were setting up, hopefully, things that we can return to, and stories that we can tell in the future.
Oh, lovely. So is it Rail? Is that the...
Yes.
Rail. Okay. I am pretty much obsessed with Rail. His portrayal in Dooku Jedi Lost, particularly his Texas-style accent,
yes.
Is that something you were aware of when writing dialogue for this character? Because it is wonderful.
Well, he was created by, of course, the wonderful Claudia Gray, who was already using him in Master Apprentice. And it was quite soon after she started to write Master Apprentice, I started to write Jedi Lost. And we were already working together. And so it seemed quite natural that we'd end up talking about these characters. And we decided, it'd be great to have him move over. Never see him as an actual Padawan, because again, you don't want to tell every story straight away. But neither of us knew the accent. In fact, I think Claudia thought he was Australian when she was writing him. And, it was the Southern accent was never, the Texas accent, sorry, was never really there. It was never really part of it. And especially as Claudia is such a big fan of Tombstone, the movie, it's quite a surprise that she didn't know this. And so it came to both of us as a shock when the casting happened. But yeah, definitely the attitude was always there. And Claudia was great and sent me through some early drafts of his first appearances in Master Apprentice. And from that, I sort of worked through. and we would send dialogue back and forth to each other, and we'd get his very laissez-faire attitude to life and the Jedi way and the Jedi rules, more importantly. So I think actually the character was all there, and the casting was the sort of the thing that clinched it in the end. But I know we were both surprised when we first heard the voice.
Oh, to have been a fly on the wall to see both of your expressions when you first heard him speak.
Yeah, it was amazing. And we were sending messages back and across to the Atlantic going, have you heard? It's like, so it was great.
I love that's wonderful. Speaking of strong characters, but this one not as wonderful. Poor Sifo Dyas. He's long been a mystery to Star Wars fans, but he's explored in great detail here. In fact, it makes his appearance in Clone Wars towards the end of that series even more disturbing, quite honestly. Yeah. Talk about how you fleshed out this enigmatic character.
A lot of it came from that appearance. I love those episodes.
Sure.
And because you don't really know at that point whether that is whether it's part of a vision or manipulation or whatever, but just that it is quite a nightmarish image. And again, I wanted to map that journey. And there was a Legends comic, and for the life of me now, the creators have gone from my brain, and I do apologize, but there was a comic where Dooku obviously ordered Sifo's death, and then had the corpse sent to him so he could bury him. So again, it was that idea of the tragic character in Dooku who's having to do these things on the bidding of his master to people that he actually loves quite, strongly. And from that image of that comic, which has stayed for me for so many years, I knew I wanted to explore more of their friendship. And again, that wasn't in the original brief. It was mentioned, I think it was those lines, and we could meet Sifo along the way. And I thought, no, I wanted someone who we would see with Dooku throughout his life. A touchstone of how Dooku's changing and how life is changing for all of them. And so, it was another way of exploring how Dooku would react to other people and what kind of relationships would get to him. And also asking that constant question of what if, a question a lot of fans have already asked, myself included, is, what would have happened if Qui-Gon had lived? Would he have been able to get through to Dooku? And I wanted to add a lot more questions to that. What would have happened if Sifo and Dooku's relationship had maintained itself through his life? And again, we're not trying to give too much spoilers, but obviously something bad happens to them by the time that Dooku's using Sifo at the end. And so it was gay. It was thinking of those, given those points in Dooku's life where things could go very differently, because Dooku is obviously so essential for the entire saga. Because if it wasn't for Dooku, then none of what we would see in the later films could have come about, because he's the cornerstone for Sidious's plan. He sets up the conflict that would eventually lead to the Empire. So again, I wanted to put loads of different points in where you could say what would have happened if that had maintained.
Well, and it creates a really, really rich experience. And I've been telling people this for quite a while now, since I got the chance to hear this wonderful story. But not only is this a great story to get into the background of Dooku and the world of Star Wars, this wonderful, captivating time period where we see the slow evolution of the Emperor's power through a fulcrum like Dooku. But the way that this thing is presented, it is so much more than an audiobook. It very much is a radio drama, and the experience that you have given to myself and so many countless Star Wars fans. I mean, I can't thank you enough. It must have been great to write, to listen to, but you really have added a wonderful aspect of the mythology to it. So thank you.
Well, no, thank you. It was quite daunting to tell this story, because again, it's one of the things when you say, "Oh, tell Dooku's story," that's fine. It hasn't really been told, and then you realize, oh, it hasn't really been told, and you want it to be different. You want it to be fresh. I have my own little interests in life and in Star Wars, and one of those, the Jedi and the setup of the Jedi and how they work, and it gave me a chance to play with that, to again look back to what it's like for a young Jedi, life is like, and to explore what it really means to be a Jedi who has to live that life every day. I think that's something I've always found. I found that fascinating ever since I first heard Obi-Wan talk about, the past and the Jedi Knights in Star Wars, and first mentioning those words like Clone Wars that obviously meant nothing back then, but now we're exploring more and more. And so, yeah, it offered so many different opportunities to obviously not only just explore a little bit about the dark side, but to really try and to get up close and personal to the Jedi themselves, and everything that the Jedi are such a contradiction, and wonderfully so. If they were all Superman, it would be a very boring universe. But there are there are personalities there. Like all orders, religious orders, that there are people who struggle with rules, and there are people who will find ways around rules, and there are people who will turn the blind eye for the greater good. And I think those are really interesting things to explore. And Dooku, thankfully, gave me a chance to explore a lot of them.
Oh, here. And thank goodness we have you in the Star Wars fold, because this is, I have the feeling, you've already done so much great work in Star Wars, Vader's Castle, and the wonderful Choose Your Own Adventure book. So really, this is great. And so without revealing too much, can we hope to see or hear more of these amazing stories from you, radio dramas, or these characters, or anything?
I know that there's definitely plans to do more radio dramas. This was a bit of an experiment, and it's something that people are very excited about. And thankfully, it's done well enough. We now have this script book coming out in October, and I know there are plans for more. For me personally, yes, there is more Star Wars on the horizon. I can't obviously say what that is at the minute. I'm busy writing the sequel to Tales from Vader's Castle, Return to Vader's Castle, which is coming out in October. And then there are other things going on behind the scenes that I really can't talk about. But yeah, this is, touch wood, I'm going to be around in the Star Wars galaxy for a long, long time.
Which is wonderful, wonderful news. Well, hey, Cavan, thank you so much for coming on Coffee with Kenobi. It would be an absolute delight to have you on to have some tea or coffee or whatever beverage suits your fancy whenever you're interested.
Okay, yeah, no problem at all. I'd love to come back.
And please let everyone know where they can reach out to you if they want to ask you a question or just say hello.
Sure. But one of the best places is my website, which is cavanscott.com, or find me on Twitter. It's just Cavan Scott, or on Instagram. I spend far too much time on social media when I should be writing. So usually if you come along and say hi, I will respond. And if it gives me a chance to talk Star Wars and Star Wars theory, then I will lap it up.
I love it. Cavan Scott, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take a quick break and close out the show. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are the podcast you're looking for. This is
Before we officially close out the show, I want to thank our CWK sponsors, Penguin Random House Audio, MEI and Mousefan Travel, and One Nation Coffee. Please support them the way they support our podcast, and remember to listen to new and archived shows of Coffee with Kenobi wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, YouTube, or our website www.coffeewithkenobi.com, or wherever you enjoy listening to your favorite shows. And if you listen to the show through iTunes, please leave us a review. You can also find us on social media such as Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest, and we'd love for you to check us out there. Be sure to listen to our CWK family of shows too, including Legends Library, Resistance Reactions, Comics with Kenobi, and Lattes with Leia. Please leave a review for each of those shows as well, and be sure to subscribe to each of them individually on their own respective feeds. In addition to the places I just mentioned for Coffee with Kenobi, you can find me personally twice a month on the podcast Looking at Lucasfilm, part of the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, as well as on Twitter at Mr. Zher, MRZEHR, and you can find my writing on CWK's website, as well as StarWars.com and IGN. Don't forget to check out www.patreon.com/coffeewithkenobi to help support this show, as well as get access to CWK Prover, our exclusive podcast not heard anywhere else. There are also t-shirts, coffee mugs, and so much more, but most importantly, 10% of your donation goes directly to St. Jude Children's Hospital. I want to thank our guests Cavan Scott and Tom Gross for joining us, and I especially want to thank each and every one of you for joining me each and every week for a cup of coffee. This truly is the best mythology and fan base. It's my favorite personally, and I can't think of better people to discuss it with than each and every one of you. Until next time, this is a podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along. Move along.
Looking to catch up on the latest Star Wars books? Try listening to them on audio. Featuring sound effects and music directly from the movies, Star Wars audiobooks are the definitive listening experience. From brand new audiobooks such as Thrawn Treason and the audiobook exclusive Dooku Jedi Lost, to our blockbuster movie tie-in editions, you have plenty to keep you entertained. Start listening wherever audiobooks are sold.